All right, take two, medical sales live. Let's see if this works. And if it doesn't, I'm so sorry. We'll see how it is. Douglas, you're the best, man. Great. So it's working on mobile. All right. So as usual, let's kick off the show as we like to. Drop or comment what city you're joining in from. Anwar Hussein coming in from the New York area right now. Welcome, Anwar. We got Eric Diaz, DPT. I remember Eric joining from Orlando. What's up? Welcome, Eric. Welcome. Of course, Douglas over in Detroit. Let's see who else we got. Comment with what city you're coming in from. So let me introduce the topic. So we're gonna start with this topic for today. I'm gonna cover it briefly, and then of course we're gonna go straight into the Q&A session. So if you're a member of the Medical Sales Network Effects program, of course, get your questions ready. If you weren't able to attend live, I'll check the Google Doc. Otherwise, you know how I like to do it. Raise your hand. I'm gonna bring you on live. And for those of you who might be a little bit want to stay anonymous, I never, aside maybe your first name, I never mention what company you're with. So, but if you want an anonymous question, you can submit it. All right. So let's let's get right into it. So the topic of the day is using psychology and segmentation specifically. And let me edit that real quick. We're using psychology segmentation uh, to attract the right MedTech adopters. Okay. The reason why this is a very important topic is that, as we all know, when you adopt a new technology, there is some behavior change that comes along with it. But the other side that you have to keep in mind is, let me turn down my iPad screen here. Um, is who you attract. So it's very important to do that. Now you don't have control of this all the time, but you have to try and think about who you're attracting and how they're going to fit in the adoption curve. We got a few more people joining. Here we go. We got Xavier Mayo from Tampa, Ira Kirschenbaum from New York, the great and powerful Dr. Ira Kirschenbaum. I think he's still on. All right. So with that being said, let me share my screen. All right, so we're going to share it there. And then I'm going to share on, let's see. Let me share on the broadcast. All right, I'm going to have to do this and it's going to, all right. All right, sorry for those who I just gave a, I may have given you a little bit of a headache with that. Okay, so let's get started. So let's start with kind of a baseline, right? And so we all, I've always shown this. I always think it's important to go through, but the technology adoption life cycle curve, right? And let me make sure. Yep. Looks like it's working. Okay. So we all seen this. If you haven't seen it, that's okay. But this is the famous Jeffrey Moore crossing the chasm technology adoption curve. And as we all know, you can see that these segments, the larger the market gets, you go into these different segments. So the mainstream market is over here. Okay. What I like to focus on is right over here. And this is not just specific to startups. I want to be clear about that. If you're at a big company like a Medtronic, a Stryker, Johnson Johnson, you have to think about this as well, because when you launch a new product, you're essentially going up this curve. Now, the thing that you have to keep in mind is, let's say you just launched a new product, let's say at Medtronic or Stryker, and you have 3 people who adopt it. Just because they're the first to adopt, that doesn't mean they're necessarily a technology enthusiast, right? Sometimes you end up with somebody who has an appetite, or really psychographically they fit in the mainstream market, but just something happened that they coincidentally adopted here. And again, like, adoption of B2B technology isn't as simple as a B2C transaction where somebody sees something, they like it, they buy it, right? A lot of things can happen. So for example, you could have a hospital that adopts a new technology where the person driving the technology adoption is a technology enthusiast. Let's say it's the chief attending, but then in that same department, maybe the chair or another fellow is also there, but they're more of a pragmatist or conservative. Okay, so let's talk about the psychographics of this. Okay, um, when we look at the adoption curve, every oops, every one of these groups, they sit in different areas. Okay, so here we have innovators, which you can think of as technologists, right? They're the first to try an innovation and they're willing to take risks. You have to be able to understand the difference between these people and visionaries who are leaders, are comfortable adopting new innovations. Those are technically your early adopters. Your technologists are not. This is very, very different. Again, and this stuff over here is definitely important, but this has a whole set of problems that come along with it. Over here, you're dealing mainly with like economies of scale when you're getting over here. So again, early majority you need evidence that the innovation works before adopting. They want to see it's a full solution. Late majority, it's really based on economic necessity, et cetera, right? So don't worry about this. The key is this part over here. So let's go through that. So again, when you're dealing with innovators, which is a small percentage of the population, these are technologists. First to try an innovation, they're willing to take risks. You don't see that over here in the early adopters phase. And the basic difference is that your baby being the technology can be really ugly over here. This is the area where you're dealing with somebody who they want a science project. They like the fact that your R&D team and your product team are reaching out because they want to get feedback from them. They want to deal with like technical specs, etc. That's really important. Okay. But these people are very different from the visionaries over here. Your visionary is going to be somebody who's going to be a little bit more, and no offense to the technologists out there, they're going to be a little bit more of a key opinion leader, right? Mainly a KOL. So, for example, I mean, oh, and by the way, if you like what I'm saying, guys, do me a big favor. See that emoji button? You know, please hit those emoji buttons because that helps this stream reach more people. So hit those emoji buttons. I like to see those hearts and everything fly around. Now, with the early adopters, seeing these as visionaries, this is more prime time. Okay, over here with the innovators. Okay, and I'm going to use my course. I'm going to use my course as a good example. So my course on medical sales and doing digital medical sales. Right now, I'm kind of dealing with technologists. Right, these are the people that are they're first to try it. They don't mind giving me feedback. When I start getting to the early adopters and visionary stage, right, I have to have a little bit more of a buttoned up product. There has to be a little bit more reliability in the product in terms of what they're going to get, because these early adopters, these visionaries, these are going to be the key to essentially cross the chasm eventually and get into the early majority. Okay, it's kind of like this side starts to get things going. The early adopters start giving you momentum, and then that allows you to go up the technology adoption curve. Okay, now it's important to know who you're dealing with, because you could very well have, by coincidence or by pure luck, you've gotten an early adopter, a visionary who adopted your technology over here, right? It's not so clean cut. If that happens, you have to be able to recognize that very, very quickly. And the reason why is because if you're dealing with a visionary who adopted your product over here and you're spending time trying to get technical specs from them, you want them to deal with R&D, they don't want to do that. This person, the visionary, they want to be on podium talking about how, they're bringing a new standard to market, those kind of, that's what this person wants to do. Your technologists, right? These people, not all the, it's very rare. They're not usually the people that want to be up on podium. They don't want to have a whole lot of press. The other thing is that the mistake I see companies make is they start relying on these technologists. Again, these are the innovators to do commercial work, meaning, hey, can you introduce us to these people? Can you go on podium? They don't want to do that most of the time. Psychologically, these people adopt something very, very early because they like, figuring stuff out. They like the technical side of it, right? They're not going to want that over here. And again, these things, it's not so clear cut, right? Could you have somebody who fits both these areas? Yeah, absolutely. I've dealt with surgeons who they've adopted something very early on. They're technologists, but then as they've grown with the company, they've kind of evolved into an early adopter, right? And by early adopter, I mean somebody who's a visionary. So perfect example. If you look at I always use robotics as an example. You can get somebody who adopts your product here, right? Who's, let's say, technologists. They're really geeky. They like this, but then if it's such a new technology, they start getting a lot of attention from their peers, and if they have the right underlying psychology, they might cross over to become more an early adopter and visionary, because now they're like, okay, you know what? I want to do things. I want to be a leader, right? So keep in mind, you can find somebody who's always been a technologist, but they didn't have the right vehicle for a technology to move them into this area of being a visionary, right? That's the big thing. And again, there's a difference that you have to understand between someone who's willing to take risks and somebody who's comfortable adopting innovations. Someone who's willing to take a risk, as an example, might be somebody who works out of an ASC, or they're working at a smaller hospital, and they're willing to say, "Hey, we're going to try this technology. It might not work at all." They're willing to risk that political capital for something to try something new. Somebody over here is comfortable adopting innovations, meaning that if I adopt something, there's a high likelihood that it's going to work 8 or 9 out of 10 times. Versus somebody over here, it's like it's 50-50. It may not work at all. Okay? Now, if we look at the technology adoption curve, and again, what we have here is the Gardner hype cycle overlaid on the technology adoption curve. Okay. So if you guys look above here, okay, the technology adoption curve, or I'm sorry, the Gardner hype cycle, when a new technology comes out, the y-axis here, this is expectations, this is time. There's kind of a big spike, a technology trigger, and there's a peak of inflated expectations, meaning that you have a lot of expectations and the technology fails to meet it. That's when it goes down. But then over time, you have adoption, right? That correlates pretty well with your innovators over here, because as you have this technology peak, that involves marketing. And if you do this the right way, right, you're able to create a strong enough signal to noise to get these innovators to sort of find you and come forward, right? And it's not perfect, again, but at some point, as this peak of expectation starts to go down, at the same time, you have early adopters who, while this is on its down run, early adopters are willing to say, yeah, you know what, even though this technology isn't perfect, because that's usually what happens in my at least in my analysis. This this downturn usually happens when this peak of inflated expectations, and then people start realizing the technology isn't that good. And during this peak, you might end up having people from early majority, late majority, laggards, not adopting the technology, coming to check it out, and then because there are certain things that are not addressed, like somebody in the late majority, they want to know that you have a full solution. There's an economic justification for it, all these things. You may not have any of those things. And so that's what causes this deflation of expectations. And people are like, yeah, I've seen this new technology. I don't think it's that great, etc. But because of this decrease, these early adopters, remember, they're comfortable adopting innovations, right? Because it's kind of starting to prove itself out, right? And they're willing to say, you know what, I'll be the early adopter for this thing, because if it works 8 out of 10 times, I can be successful with it. And then between the combination of working with these innovators and early adopters, you improve the technology, and a lot of things have to happen for you to be able to, quote unquote, cross the chasm. Crossing the chasm doesn't just happen by accident, by the way. Just because you have all these people, the chasm doesn't just happen by accident. A lot of things happen that kill companies right here, which is when you're trying to cross over into this sort of late early adoption, like early majority area. If you don't have a full solution, it's this struggle between what the early majority requires and what early adopters want, right? Now, the last thing that I want to cover, and then we'll kind of go into Q&A, is This is Maloney's 16% rule, which essentially that once you've reached 16% adoption of any innovation, you have to change your messaging and media strategy from one that's based on sort of scarcity to one that's based on social proof. Okay, in order to accelerate through the chasm into the tipping point. Again, there's more than just this is more than just a messaging exercise here. There's product requirements that have to happen here as well. But again, over here, right, the scarcity principle and the psychology that works with innovators and early adopters. For those of you who are in my program, remember our class, the persuasion, the 6 principles of persuasion or psychology of influence. Scarcity is one of them, which is like, hey, we don't, we're not allowing a lot of people to adopt this. We don't have a whole lot of, support. So like, do you want to be one of those people? Right. So again, the adoption profile and psychographic of an innovator is that they're a technologist. They want a science project. Early adopters, visionaries. The key to both of these is that these people are creators. Okay. All right. That's the thing you have to keep in mind. They are creators. Okay. So they like creating new things. They like creating markets. Once you get over and you start moving through the market, and by the way, a lot of companies think they're crossed the chasm and everything. And when I look at them, it's like, no, like you remember, you have to have over 16% market share to start saying you're even moving into the main majority, right? It's kind of like Mazor Robotics, the first robotic company I worked for, like they semi started crossing the chasm maybe a year ago or so, like just based on the adoption of robotic technology, right? And it's not because Mazor necessarily is over in the mainstream. It's because robotic spine surgery as a whole is over in the mainstream. Okay, so when you cross this chasm, right, then you have to start using more social proof. Okay, now and again, look at the psychographic and the social technographics of these people: pragmatists and conservatives. Okay, critics and collectors, joiners and spectators. Right now, can you use social proof over here? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know why? All these people are human beings. Every human being is persuaded by social proof, right? The main thing is that that's the thing it's not going to work over here as well, because think about what an innovator and early adopter want. They want to be the first. They want to be, the pioneers and everything. That's what attracts them, right? But as you start gaining more traction here, you can start using social proof. I would say more so authority bias to start moving over here. And maybe, that's a good note actually, is that I should do a breakdown of the psychological biases that happen for you to go from here to over here. Okay. So main takeaways from all of this is one, the majority, whether you're launching a new product or you're at a new startup, you're technically over here. So understanding the adoption profile of these people and what they need is going to be important. And most importantly, know the difference between these people and these people. Like, you got to know who you're dealing with. Again, you can end up with a technologist who becomes a visionary, but you have to figure out, is that their interest? And then how do you coach them over here? So the technologists that I've worked with in the past, the question I like to ask is like, do you like presenting and being on podium with your peers? Like, do you want to be like known for this, or do you prefer to kind of be, sort of in the background and just do your own thing, right? If they want to be on podium, they want to do webinars, they want to do these things, right? Then by all means, find ways to help them transition from here to over here. If they're a visionary, right, and you know, like, okay, this is a person for podium and everything, and you put them over here, all you got to know is that this person's going to get super, super tense and restless because, one, your technology is constantly not working or pissing them off, and number two, they're waiting for things to work because they want to go and present to their peers like, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is the new standard, etc. Right? So hope that makes sense. Let's just open it up to questions real quick. And let me stop sharing screen. Okay. So hope that makes sense. So let's let me drop in the main banner. All right, so we're gonna open this up for questions now. So if you have questions about what I just presented, feel free to. Otherwise, I'm just gonna take general questions from anybody. Let me take a quick look. All right, we have a question over here on Zoom. Okay, so the question is, this is from Trevor. Hey, Trevor. And by the way, for those who are on Zoom, if you do have a question and you can raise your hand and come on live, that'd be great. All right, so the question from Trevor: we have decent penetration, and actually, Trevor, let me go over to StreamYard and put your question up. All right. So the question is, let me see. We have decent penetration in our market, but there are still barriers as the adoption of digital pathology is mixed between clients. So we're effectively selling both general digital pathology. So yeah. So from what I can understand, um, yeah. So the main thing is that the reason why you're having that barrier to adoption is because when you just like I mentioned before, to attract those early adopters and those innovators, it's really a marketing exercise, right? You have to do webinars, you have to run ads, you have to do posts to track those people to you, because you can't go one by one. You know, there might be a perfect innovator for you that's working in some random clinic don't even know. So the only way to find those people is to make it easier for them to find you. But in that process, right, you're gonna get all kinds of people. So for example, you might end up with somebody who's, let's say, an early majority or later adopter, but they just submit for a demo because they're just trying to get information. They're curious. The most important thing I can tell you, Trevor, and I learned this actually from a lot of the great sales leaders who came out of Intuitive and Mazor Robotics, and what we call deal rips. If you don't know what a deal rip is, I highly recommend you do these. Deal rips are essentially once a quarter, you get the whole sales team. Everybody goes up, presents their deals, and they just get their deal ripped in public, right? Or at least in front of the other salespeople, right? And so the reason why I mentioned this is that you have to very quickly do an assessment and ask yourself, okay, this person who submitted for a demo, based on the questions they ask, are they really an innovator or early adopter, or are they somebody who's in the late majority who just is trying to get information for now? Because if that's the case, right, that's somebody that you provide the information with, you stay in contact with, and provide them updates, because then, you know, there's going to be a time where it's like, okay, now they're ready to adopt the product, right? And this is extremely hard for salespeople to do because, look, let's just give a perfect example. You have a new technology, and somebody from Mayo, or not, maybe not the Mayo Clinic. Let's do something else. Somebody from WashU, right? WashU, or let's say UT Southwestern, wants a demo, right? They get some information from you, but they ask questions like, how much is this going to cost? Who else is using this? Can you put me in touch with them? All those things. So those kind of questions, not all the time, but in my opinion, especially when I hear somebody asking, like, can I talk to somebody who's using this? Who else is using? Like, if they're really focused on that, there's somebody that's more early majority, right? They need social proof. Like, they're not willing to take the risk without seeing at least a few people that they know and respect using it, right? So if that's the case, just know that you can try and get that deal going. In my opinion, it's a waste of time, right? It's a waste of your time, because even if that person says, yeah, let's try and get it through the VAC committee, and let's get an evaluation and everything, they might just be going with they might just be going with the flow. And when it comes time to really push, they're not willing to put up the political capital to get something through, right? And when that happens, it's kind of like you've wasted a month or 2 or 3 months even working a deal that you really aren't, it's really not going to go anywhere. You really want to have, I can't stress this enough, the market in terms of how hospitals and clinics buy technology, it's of course changed. It's gotten more complicated. You still need a process to get a very strong clinical champion, and you really need to understand what's going on in their head, right? Like, I like to ask straight up, like, and again, you need to get to the source of truth as quickly as possible. So when you're dealing with a surgeon or a doctor or clinician, whatever it is, you need to ask them like, "Hey, look, I see that you're interested in this. Let's go and move forward." If your CFO, right, of the hospital or the chair of your department or whoever comes back and says that no, we don't want to do this, are you willing to fight for this, right? Like how hard are you willing to push? And just see what they say and just be honest with them and just say, like when I tell this to a surgeon, I preface it by saying this, Dr. Smith, I don't mean to come off the wrong way, but I need to know this information because I want to make sure that if I have you go forward with this, that you're in a position to be successful and you don't, and you don't burn political capital. So if they come back and say no, how hard are you willing to push and what do you need? Right? Like what would they need to move forward? Because that doctor who might be really into your technology, Trevor, and might want to adopt it, it could be that the people they're dealing with have certain criteria that you don't have. Like they might say, hey, they need to see that they need to see an economic study, like a case study of the economics behind this. They need to see this being used in at least a couple top 10, top 15 sites. If that's the case, don't put that physician in a position to try and force a deal through, knowing very well that you don't have the variables, or in my opinion, the weapons to move something forward. If that's the case, the best thing you can say is like, look, totally get that. I would prefer that I come back. Let's revisit this in a quarter or two, because by then we'll have a little bit more of those things. And in that case, all you do is kind of nurture the deal along, right? Versus trying to force it through. And again, just to be clear, I've never closed a capital sales deal. I just want to be very clear about that. What I have done is gotten a significant amount of pipeline going and at least work these things through, evaluations. So perfect example, and I'll address this and then I'll jump back to the Q&A. Perfect example of this is here we go. Sorry, I had my video off on Zoom. So a perfect example of this is if I was dealing with, let's say, a gargantuan hospital system, let's say Johns Hopkins, right? Or UCSF, like something that's going to be huge. Without me even talking to anybody, I know that deal is going to take a long time and they're going to require certain things for that deal to be successful. So I try and get the things done now that are going to be needed like in a quarter or two. Let's say if it's just getting it approved through procurement and approved by the department, we set up an evaluation, right? Those things you can do so that you kind of time it, right? So instead of trying to force a deal all in one quarter, like you're not going to close. It's hard to close these huge deals within one quarter. Some of them you have to just say this is going to take some time, and in which case you have to just nurture it along. Constantly have, I would say, with your clinical champion, have check-ins once a month just to let them know, like, hey, here's what's going on with the deal. Here's what's going on with our company, right? Because then it kind of gives them the time that they need. The times I see deals go just sideways is when you're dealing with a deal that's going to take time and it's going to need all these variables, and a salesperson is just trying to force it through. Like it's a waste of time and energy and resources, right? And it's just I've never seen that go well. So I hope that answers the question, Trevor. Let's see. What other questions do we have? All right. So if you have a question on LinkedIn, go ahead and just drop it. It's a little bit quiet right now. Oh, my good buddy Daigo Tanaka. This is great. I need to forward it to my med device startup founder friend. Yeah, totally. Daigo, aside from LinkedIn, all these they do get recorded onto, majority of them get recorded onto YouTube. So you can find them there. Let me take a look here. Okay. Yep. So, hey, Lindsay, I'm back from Salt Lake City. All right, welcome back. Yeah. So, the big thing that I would say is just, again, you have to understand where these people fall in, right? And and how you're going to move them forward, right? And let's let me bring back my I'm going to bring back my whiteboard. So let me share my screen real quick. Um all right. Here we go. Okay. So something that you should consider, all right, is while you're doing this, here's how you use LinkedIn. And let me come back here. Sorry, everybody, giving everybody a headache. Let me just use this. Okay. All right, there we go. All right, let's go back to the presentation mode. Okay. This is like by far one of my favorite topics. In my opinion, if you're a founder, salesperson, whatever, like this is the most important thing you can learn is really understanding how this all works. Okay. So here's the thing. Okay. Um, let's see. No, we want this. Okay. All right. And okay. So for this group, and let's see. All right. I'm not sure why that's so. All right, there we go. So, yeah, for this group right here. Okay. All right. This is where in my opinion, you can use LinkedIn and Twitter to post adoption and customer success. God, that's just, I'll tell you, is that like not the worst handwriting you've ever seen in your life? So I'll show you like a good example of what that looks like in practice. So this is what we did over at Potrero, which is, as you can see here, when 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 we would do like a let's say during COVID, we were sending these uh, our monitors out to hospitals for free at the time just to help them with COVID. But we would document the technology adoption process. Like look at this. Here is just the shipment going out, right? And then over here, another shipment going out. So these are simple questions to show. Like here's a shipment, here's where it's going, right? You know, and so showing it in real. So this whole time you haven't seen the product, right? And that's the key to this is that you don't have to show the product, you know, because just by showing the adoption happening in real time, like that's enough to get these people, right? And think about this right here. If we go to LinkedIn, let's go to LinkedIn real quick, and we're gonna go over to one of my favorites, Joe Urban. Okay, so let's look at what Potro's been doing. So this is on Potro's page and on their CEO's page. But again, if we go through, right? Yeah, here we go. Look, adoption, right? Here's adoption happening. More adoption happening. Adoption happening. You know, shipments going out, right? The key to this is like in real time, how do you show the adoption occurring so that people who need to see certain things, they're attracted to it? Remember what I showed earlier? Look, uh, here we go. Let's erase all this stuff here. Okay. What's needed for the adoption to really take flight? That's social proof, right? See that? Okay. So social proof is needed for who? These people right here. Okay. Now, here's the key. Okay. Petrero, I mean, I haven't been involved with them. I haven't worked with them in a while. I mean, I left the company like 3 years ago. But again, let's go to their main post here again. Again, so we see the adoption happening, right? So this is all what? This is like social proof. If we go down more, let's see. I think there's another one at some point. If not, I'm going to move forward. It's probably a little bit far back. So look, just by these pictures, let me show you the psychology that's being used. CEO speaking at an important event, authority bias, right? Authority bias. Okay. Authority bias. Physician showing publication that they did, right? Authority bias. Um, a nurse adopting the product, right? That's social proof. Okay. If we go up here, right? Even though this picture does not have any people in it, that's social proof. He's like, look at all these monitors are being adopted, right? But technically, Potrero's not, they're not, I mean, again, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think so. They're not at a point where they have that much adoption, right? They have a lot of adoption, but they're not here yet. Just if I had to guess, they might be here, they might be here, right? So why are they using social proof? Well, the main reason why is that they technically, in my opinion, they have the right early adopters, right? They're already good. Innovators, this happened a few years ago. They're good there. Now they have the right early adopters. So again, if we go back to this post, right? Who are the early adopters, right? Here we go. These people right here, right? These are the people who help them write a paper to get breakthrough designation, right? Like Ashish Khanna. Okay, so Ashish Khanna, right? I can go back and see this. Like, here we go. This is back in 2020, right? So this is me directly reaching out to him and saying, hey, really enjoy your post. I love what you do. Can we get on and talk about our technology? He's like, yeah, let's do it. Okay, so this is back in 2020, right? So again, back in that time, I was immediately able to identify that Ashish Khanna fits in this category. And this is just through LinkedIn. How was I able to do that? Well, and I'm not going to go all the way back to his post on LinkedIn, but if you look at, what he put, back then he had something similar, but in his feature section, he kept showing like these very innovative things that he was into, right? If I looked at his activity, right, you can look at the activity and see like, okay, he likes this post. He liked this post. This is an investor summit, right? Why is he interested in these things, right? He's interested in new technology, right? If you looked at the posts that he made, right? The posts, everything that I read about him very clearly indicated that he would be a fit right here as an early adopter, which means a visionary. Okay, let's go back and redefine that. A visionary is someone who's a leader and comfortable adopting new innovations. If I went to Ashish Khanna in 2017 when I first started at Potrero, he does not fit over here. The guy's the head of his department at Wake Forest. He's not going to be taking a huge risk on a science project. But in 2020, Potrero had done enough to validate its technology that it works. It had enough backing. And so for him, He was a visionary, so he was able to see the future without seeing it, or seeing the future with his eyes closed, essentially. And that's why somebody like him joined, helped Petro in terms of doing this clinical study to say, hey, let's validate this and do it. And that's what led to the FDA breakthrough designation. So just knowing these things, this is what's going to help you identify, you know what? There's one doctor who I could see would fit in this area, right? And again, if you do that, right, you get the right people here, then you have enough momentum to start moving over to tip into the early majority. And again, I don't know where Potrero is on this adoption curve, but now they've gotten innovators, they've have early adopters, they've satisfied certain things in the market, such as FDA breakthrough designation, that these people over here want. Okay, so how does this translate to sales? The more you understand these things, the more you think about it, right? The easier your life will be. Because again, you're not just being, your biases aren't being driven just by what's a huge deal and what's not a huge deal, right? So let me stop screen share over here. There we go, and come back. So that's the main thing that I want you guys to understand is when it comes to technology adoption, right? Whether you're at a J&J or a Medtronic or anything else, you have to think about psychologically who are you dealing with. And again, you can only do so much. Whoops. you can only do so much by just looking at their profile, looking what publications they have. You have to talk to people. That's why I recommend thinking about doing things like virtual demos or recorded demos, right? And this is not on a salesperson. This is on a marketing department to think through this, which is how do we make it easier for more people to watch our technology demo, right? And enough of a taste that somebody leans in and says, let me learn more. So that could be a 5-10 minute recorded technology demo, right? That's scalable. And then you're able to send that to the Ashish Khannas of the world, right? And see like who's interested enough to get on the phone call. And then on those phone calls, you ask the right questions, right? What kind of technology have you adopted in the past? Have you ever, when was the last time you pushed a new technology through? How did that go? Right? You have to find these things out. Now, granted, are there databases that tell you which hospitals have adopted certain technology and everything? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't like that. It's a good starting point, but if you do the manual work this way, right? That's how you find these kind of things, right? And to bring this all together full circle, like why do I have this program called the Medical Sales Network Effects? If you put out the right content and the right cadence over time, right, you can see different people engaging with it. Different people are going to have a certain level of awareness. And then in your outbound, you're able to determine who's going to be the right fit for these adoptions, who's not going to be the right fit. And at that point, you start making much better decisions as to where you're going to spend your time, right? All of this boils down to where you spend your time. The worst deals that I've seen in my career is when a salesperson, through luck, sheer luck, or something else, gets interest from a major hospital, but they don't ask these hard questions ahead of time, and then they think they have this deal that's going to close in a year, and in reality, it's not. It's a dog. It's not going anywhere. So that's it for today. Let's see. Any questions, comments on LinkedIn, YouTube, questions, comments from the group over on Zoom. If you have a question, raise your hand. Again, right now, just to be clear, for those who are on Zoom, this doesn't have to be questions related to the topic I just presented. So if you have questions about job searching, if you have questions about something tactical on LinkedIn, you have a question about, whatever it is, this is now open forum. Ask me anything. So let me put that banner up on LinkedIn. So go ahead. If you have a question, drop it in the comment section, Over on Zoom, either submit the question in the Q&A box or raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll call it a day. So let's see. Okay. All right, looks like we are good. So I'm gonna wrap up for the day. Thank you all for joining. For those on Zoom, you can stay on for a second. I have some private messages for you guys, but everybody on LinkedIn and YouTube, thank you so much. If you like this show, like do me a favor, like the video, go check out our podcast. Our podcast is on Spotify. It's on Apple. Sorry, I'm like lost today. Um, Subscribe to the podcast, leave a review. We'd really appreciate it. So, as always, best of luck this quarter, and we'll see you next week, as always. All right, over on